What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Xehther here, and we are back at it again to drop What If Deku Had a Stand. Now, from the thumbnail alone, I'm guessing many of you guys are probably able to tell which stand we are going to be covering in this series. Obviously, we're going to be doing Zawalda! So if you guys are excited for that, make sure to go down below and smash that like button if you guys go on to want a part 2, because the like goal for today's video will be 20 likes. Now, I know it's a very high like goal, and it's something that I genuinely don't think we'll be able to hit, but please guys bear with me. Click that like button, we might just get it. I don't know, man, you guys might have to surpass my expectations. But with that being said though, guys, I will go on to go and be quiet and hit the intro so you guys can go on to enjoy the video. That being said, peace.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Okay, now before I do go on to actually begin the video, I do have one thing to say. Sorry that I have been on a little bit of a hiatus recently. It is just simply because, you know, Christmas just passed and I wanted to have some time to kick it back, relax, be with my family, and honestly just be lazy and pig out on food. So with that, I also decided that with, you know, the holiday spirit being right around the corner, I was going to be doing a giveaway. Now this giveaway will be for a PS5. And I'm guessing many of you guys are like, nah, this is sketchy, bro. This is sketchy. Well, think twice about that, because I ended up getting a hookup on one of the new PS5s from a homeboy who ended up not really using his. And so I decided, you know what, instead of me having it, seeing as I already have a PC, it would be around the time to give back to my fans, my supporters, the people who have made me. So if you guys want to join the giveaway, then please make sure to go down below to my description or go to the pinned comment down below, and make sure to follow my TikTok, where I will be also uploading more anime content for you guys, and simply by following me, you guys will be entered. In about a month from now, I'm probably going to be announcing who the winner is on my community tab, as well as on like 3 videos. So with that being said, good luck, and let's get into the actual story. So this What If actually all starts off the day that Deku was born. Now, nothing crazy is going to be happening here. It's not like Deku's like hair is going to be blonde or anything like that. It's not like there's really going to be any major impacts to the story from when he's a little kid. Deku is still going to be himself, blonde, not blonde hair, but green hair, just like usual, green eyes. And when he grows up, he's going to be a very average child. However, once Deku turns to about the age of 6 years old, Deku's childhood would have essentially remained just like it does in canon. And Deku would have already been branded quirkless. The doctors didn't end up basically doing right checks, and it turns out that Deku is in fact going to be a late bloomer, because the stand that he's going to be having isn't going to be an actual stand as much as it's going to be a little bit of a quirk. Now, just because it's going to be a quirk doesn't mean that I'm going to basically nerf it or anything. Zawalda is definitely going to be very, very powerful. All right, I'm not nerfing it in any sense, way, or form. So keep listening. Trust, it's gonna get interesting. So obviously, with Deku still being bullied by Bakugo, Deku does end up growing up with that thought of not all men are created equal. And with that comes Deku essentially walking into class one day. Now, when Deku walks into a school, he obviously feels a little scared, just like he always does. I mean, Bakugo's right there standing by the door with his balloons, just like always, and Deku is simply terrified. You know, he doesn't even want to walk inside the classroom because, you know, Bakugo's there and Deku doesn't want to get picked on. So he tries to grab onto his mom's leg, and it's at this point that he says, I wish time would just stop and I didn't have to go in there, as immediately out of nowhere, time would freeze. Deku would look up at his mom as he would say, Mom? And this is when he would like fall down to the ground as he just sees the entire world before him freeze. And it's at this moment that Deku would turn around and look up as he sees this golden like figure standing above him. Now, when Deku sees this, he would be in utter disbelief, because Deku just summoned his quirk for the first time, or his stand, Zawalda. Now, obviously, I keep saying it like that, but you know, the world, right? And obviously, with this comes this golden stand that just stands very tall, powerful, and Deku just looks at it as he just says, "What are you?" Now, the stand would simply stay silent, and Deku would like just be wondering what's going on until eventually, like, the time would resume. And it's at this point that Deku would feel pretty exhausted from having used his quirk for the first time. It's at this point that Deku would fall down onto the ground and Inko would pick him up saying, Izuku? And she would rush him over to the quirk doctor. It's at this point that, Deku would be taken to not the quirk doctor, but a normal doctor. And after running a couple of tests on Izuku, they would realize that Deku has awakened his quirk. Now with that, obviously comes Deku going to school the very next day and telling everybody, I got my quirk. Everybody would be very shocked and being like, no way Izuku got a quirk. I mean, there's just no way, right? Izuku couldn't have gotten a quirk. And it's at this point that Bakugo would say, what's all this talk I hear about Deku and a quirk? I definitely gotta go check this out. He'd walk over to Deku and say, hey Deku, you got a quirk, right? So I guess that means you might think you're strong or whatever. So fight me. How about we see who the strongest one here is? Now Deku would look at Bakugo and say, Bakugo, I don't know if I want to. And Bakugo would come rushing in Deku's direction. Deku would flinch as he would, unintentionally summon the world, and it would proceed to essentially punch Bakugo away, literally 2 meters before Bakugo was even getting close to Deku. And at this point, Bakugo would literally be sent flying across the classroom. People would say, was that telekinesis? And Deku would say, you don't see that? And everybody would just be like, see what? Deku would simply stay quiet. As it's at this point that a grin would go across his face as he thinks, I'm stronger than Bakugo now. I defended myself. It's at this point the teacher walks in and says, Bakugo, are you okay? And they would proceed to send Deku home for the day, saying that he has reckless usage of his quirk, and that he's not going to be allowed back into the school unless he finally fixes that quirk of his. To which Deku would proceed to, go home, and his mother, Inko, would be a little bit, ashamed, thinking that, Deku did a bad decision, but Deku just feels great. Deku feels happy. He feels as if he finally was able to stand up for himself. And this is when Inko would look at Deku's direction as she would say, I understand that maybe Bakugo isn't the best kid in the world, but hitting Bakugo and using your quirk to hurt others just isn't the way to go, Izuku. Especially if you want to become a pro hero. Now that you have a quirk, and the day that I told you, I'm sorry, I should have never said that to you, Izuku. You always had the potential to become a hero. Now that you do have a quirk, you could become the best hero there is. So please, do me a favor, and try not to use your quirk against good people again. Deku hearing this would think, Bakugo's not a good person, as he would proceed to essentially just say, yeah mom, right. As Deku would proceed to essentially walk inside of his house. This is where he would have some dinner with his mother, and about 1 week later, after Deku is sent to some training camp for quirk users, Deku would finally return, having full, a decent control over the world, obviously. And it's at this point that Deku would master the world. Sorry for that, that headphone. In case you guys are wearing headphones, I'm sorry for what I just did to your ears, but I felt like trolling for a second, so yeah. That being said though, obviously we basically have Deku returning to school, where things would now begin to change, because now people don't view Bakugo as the alpha of the school, and now they are starting to view Deku as that kid who has the power, that person who has the strength, the alpha, the role model, the leader. So when Deku returns, as soon as he walks in through those doors, Bakugo's world would shatter before his eyes. As all the kids who once ran up to Bakugo and said, what are we gonna do, Bakugo, would run over to Deku saying, hey, Izuku, why don't we hang out? Let's play, hero versus villains. They'll be like, I'll be the villain, you'll be the hero. And Bakugo hearing this would just be like, what? As Bakugo was just like, what's going on? And things would honestly just play out this way until they end up going to middle school. Bakugo would have to face some very decent internal conflict with himself of just being like, someone's better than me. And with that realization, Bakugo would end up training a lot harder than he does in canon, because obviously now he sees himself as needing to get stronger. Now he sees Deku as a sort of rival figure. And similar to what Vegeta's like, he ends up mellowing a lot during the course of the years, never exactly becoming friends with Deku or never establishing this real rivalry between each other. But Deku would go on to become more cocky, more lazy during the years. His heroic nature is still there, and his want to help people still exists, but Deku just has a very more cocky, calculated personality. And his personality is not at all going to be all that close to Dio's, just because of the simple fact that Deku grew up around a different environment. He's not part vampire, he's not Dio's reincarnation. He simply has a stand, and that stand happens to be the world. So if you guys don't think that this is what would have happened and you guys might want him to, end up having Neo's personality, then you can go feel free to make your own, what if about this and do your own thing. But this is just my interpretation. So obviously after this, we would end up having Deku essentially walk into classroom, where the teacher would throw papers in the air saying, "I know you all want to become heroes!" As after this, the class would go insanely berserk, shooting their quirks out into the air and just essentially being flamboyant. As Deku was simply in the back of the classroom, as the teacher would begin to say there's 2 students from this school going to UA, Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya. Immediately, the class would go a little silent at Bakugo's name, but when they mentioned Deku, they would all immediately be very, going crazy, like, yeah, Deku's definitely gonna get into UA. And at this point, Deku has a perfect mastery over his world, because simply, now Deku actually knows how to stop time, now Deku knows how to throw attacks, and during the 10 months of training, Deku is honestly not going to be doing that much training per se, because Deku honestly doesn't really need to. The thing that Deku mostly focuses on during the 10 months is essentially just finding out what costume he wants to use. However, that comes at a later date. So obviously after this, we would have Deku going home, but without him ever needing to essentially take the, canality to click in the original because he wanted to save time, he never ends up encountering the sludge villain, meaning the sludge villain ends up getting captured by All Might way later and Deku never ends up inheriting One for All. Instead, what we have happening is another kid ends up being in an alleyway, and that kid would be Katsuki Bakugo. And with that, basically comes this scenario where All Might ends up seeing Bakugo, and Bakugo being stronger tears off the sludge villain saying, "Get off me! Damn it!" As he just yells out at the sludge villain, and the sludge villain would just be shocked as the Bakugo's tearing away from the sludge villain's restraints, saying, "You're not gonna control me," as he would shoot out an explosion at the sludge villain, and he would finally be free. After getting free, Bakugo would jump up into the air out of the sludge villain's reach, as he would say, "Howitzer," headphone warning, "Impact!" rushing straight at the sludge villain as it would blow to pieces, and All Might would just be in awe seeing Bakugo's performance. Now, after this, we would end up having All Might approaching Bakugo in his Small Might form, asking him how would he like to grow even more powerful, as All Might would turn into his buff form and Bakugo would be in utter shock. And in case you guys are wondering, will Bakugo be getting One for All? Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. Sorry in case you're one of those people who was like, "Why would you give Bakugo One for All?" Unsubscribing right now. I'm typing up my mean comment that's gonna be seen by 3 people, and yeah. So in case you're having that reaction, your eyes are just going red, you're just going crazy right now. Sorry, but why would it? Anyways though, obviously after this, we're just going to be having Deku kind of coming up with his costume ideas, and we're just gonna skip over to the day of the actual entrance exams. Alright, however, with the fact that we are now getting into the entrance exams, we now have to cover, how strong is Deku? Now, if I had to say how strong Deku is and how good his control is with, the world, Deku has a basic understanding of it. He hasn't really tried too many things with it simply because he never has really had to really have the need to try anything new with his abilities. Because Deku's always been at the top of his class, Deku's always been powerful, Deku's always kind of had it like that, if that makes sense. And when it comes to how his personality is around girls and people in general, Deku is more around the cocky nature, so he's not going to sit here and be like, when Uraraka talks to him and he meets her outside. However, that doesn't actually end up happening because he doesn't fall. And even if he did fall, he could simply say, "The world," and immediately time would freeze. But that aside, we end up having him go into the actual test where he would be seated very close to Bakugo. Now, it's at this point that they would end up both taking the written exam, and Bakugo, being a lot more humbled by All Might in this version, would have chilled out even more. And his more heroic tendencies would end up starting to outshine through his more rough facade and exterior. That being said, it's at this point that we will now have both Bakugo and Deku go on to have the physical portion of the exam. However, the way that this will all go down is Deku would proceed to quite literally just be sitting around as he has his headphones on, and Deku just has like this golden hoodie on. No, not a golden hoodie. Let's see, what should Deku be wearing? Deku at this point is just wearing a yellow shirt, a bright yellow shirt, some black track pants and like some black Adidas ones, and then some NMDs, all right? Some black and white NMDs. And, Deku's just jumping around, kind of pivoting, using some boxing fighting stances, just messing around. And it's at this point that Deku would proceed to essentially hear Prison Mike say, "Go, go, go!" But as soon as he hears that, he would look at everybody as you would just hear the iconic Zawalda going as Deku would stop time. And it's at this point that Deku would begin to run into the exam as he would essentially proceed to just start destroying robots left and right. Robots would begin to get annihilated, and we would have a scene very reminiscent to the one where Mirio took out the entire class 1A in like an instant, literally. So with that being said, class 1A, or no, not class 1A, but a bunch of robots get eliminated very, very, very quickly. And it definitely ends up helping with like what's going on with everything. By the way, guys, I do apologize for some background noise that will be in the background, but the family's home and there's really nothing I can do about it. So if you guys do end up hearing some background noise, then please do bear with me. That being said though, this is when Deku would essentially proceed to, what's it called? Deku would proceed to, all right, I got it. Deku would proceed to essentially like turn off the time stop ability, as in everybody's eyes, they would have barely been running and they heard some kid in the back yell, "The world," but as soon as they turned back, they saw that robots started to combust. Now, everybody in the stands would just be like, "What just happened?" And people in the auditorium who were watching everything were just in utter disbelief. Literally, all of the robots in Deku's station were obliterated, and the only robot left was a zero pointer, which Nezu still hadn't released. So after this, Deku would simply put his hands in his pockets as he would proceed to essentially turn around and walk off nonchalantly. As it's at this point that everybody would be wondering what happened, and Deku would look at the cameras as he would simply have a grin on his face saying, "It was me," as he walks off, and everybody looks at Deku's direction wondering what that quirk was. Does he have some sort of quirk that allows him to blow robots up or something? Like, what even was that? And it's at this point that everybody just starts wondering what it was. It's at this point that Nezu and all of the teachers would start going through all of the kids' files until they find one that says Izuku Midoriya with the ability of time stop. Nobody actually ends up knowing about Deku's ability to have the stand, but they know about his ability to stop time. So that's what they ended up going with as for what they think his quirk is. So with that said, they end up basically like thinking that is incredible. And All Might ends up thinking about how OP this kid would have been had he given him one for all. After this, obviously, Bakugo would outshine a lot of other people, but when he's compared to Deku, who is just an absolute beast of a person, like he's the same beast, but a different animal. And I don't know if that even makes sense to you guys, but Deku is just that broken. So it's pretty good. That being said though, we basically have it to which Deku would finally go home and await his entrance letter. Now, Deku honestly has no doubts that he's going to be getting into UA, and Deku would go out to the mall where he ends up meeting some girls and just ends up going to the movies with them. It's at this point that Deku just ends up living his life, and he's having a pretty good time. And with that comes Deku finally going back home, seeing that he got into UA, and finally the day of his first day of school would arrive. Now, when he does end up going into the classroom, he ends up walking in to see Bakugo sitting towards the back of the classroom, just kind of on his phone scrolling. Ida not really bugging anybody because Bakugo's not gonna just throw his feet on top of the desk, and Deku just goes to sit down with Ida walking over towards Deku, asking him what that was in the entrance exam. But Deku would say that he's not about to reveal his cards in one go, is he? But this is when Bakugo would speak up and say his ability is to stop time. That's how it seems that everything just happens with him. As everybody would just look at Deku once more, and Deku would look at Bakugo's direction as he would simply smirk, saying, "Got it all wrong, Bakugo." But he would say, "I guess I'll let you think that though." As he would walk over to his seats, sit down, and Aizawa would shortly after tell them all to throw these suits on and meet him outside, explaining that, to be a hero, you gotta not go to orientation and you gotta be quiet in less than 8 seconds, you know what I mean? With that, however, all of the students would proceed to end up putting on their outfits for the entrance exam, and we would then basically have it to which all of them end up meeting Aizawa outside. Now, what would proceed to occur when it comes to the actual, events with with the actual thing and all of them essentially taking the quirk apprehension test, what ends up happening is Deku just proceeds to completely obliterate and decimate every single one of the challenges. Not a single one was any of these challenges failed. Deku proceeds to obliterate the grip strength test. He has monster strength. When it comes to his long jump, he simply stops time and goes right over to getting a longer score than anybody. And when it comes to the ball throw, Deku would use his stand as it would grip onto the ball and Deku throws it up. Everybody sees like this ball just floating and the ball gets sent straight into outer space, getting us grand total of infinity. So you tell me who you think ends up being the best one or like the MVP of this event. Sadly, however, we would have one student being eliminated from the classroom, that being Mineta. Mineta does end up being expelled in this version of events, and the second runner-up would of course be Bakugo with his quirk of One for All. However, not a lot of people know that he even has that ability because he simply uses it to help him out with his physical combat prowess as well as making his explosions far more powerful. At this point, let's say he has a full percentage of 20% control over One for All. Seeing as he only had 10 months, I think that is a fair amount of percentage for One for All. And with that said, I think that this is a perfect spot to leave this what if off on. If you guys went on to enjoy anything of this video, then please make sure to go down below and smash that grand total like goal of 20 likes. If the like goal is met, then of course I will be dropping part 2 tomorrow. That being said though, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your favorite boy, no, not your favorite boy, but your favorite Angry Birds conspiracy theorist, and I am signing out. Peace.